Before this story truly begins, before the names surface, before the memories unfold, before the quiet truths reveal themselves, I want to pause with you for just a moment. Not a long pause. Just a breath. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Not because I'm chasing numbers. Not because an algorithm rewards consistency. But because some stories aren't meant to be background noise. They're not something you half-watch while scrolling. They're not filler for a quiet room. Some stories sit with you. Some stories change the way you see people. And some stories quietly change the way you see yourself. This is one of those stories. By the end, you won't just understand what happened. You'll understand why it had to happen this way. So subscribe. Stay with me. Give this story your full attention, because what we're about to talk about isn't loud. It isn't flashy. It isn't dramatic in the way movies make things dramatic. It's real. And real things move differently. No fake confidence dressed up in pretty words. No cinematic speeches about self-love that sound inspiring, but feel hollow. Just honesty. Because most people misunderstand confidence. They misunderstand attraction. And they completely misunderstand what genuine connection actually is. Movies make confidence loud. Social media makes it shiny. Self-help books make it formulaic. But in real life, the most powerful forces are quiet. And when they're misunderstood, they don't just confuse you, they hurt you. People used to look at me and assume I was confident. They didn't think I worked at it. They didn't imagine I struggled. They thought it was natural, like something I was born with. Effortless. They assumed I walked into rooms already knowing where to stand. That I knew when to speak and when to stay silent. That attention drifted toward me automatically. That conversations leaned in my direction without effort. They thought I never replayed conversations at night. They thought I never questioned myself. They thought I never wondered why someone's interest faded halfway through a date. They were wrong. Painfully wrong. What they didn't see were the quiet hours afterward. The moments after a date ended too early. The silence in my apartment when the door clicked shut behind me. Me sitting on the edge of my bed, phone glowing in my hand, refreshing a message thread that had suddenly gone cold. No explanación. No confrontación. Just distance where warmth used to be. They never saw how often my laughter was slightly forced. How many times I smiled while shrinking inside. How quickly I blamed myself for something I couldn't even identify. For most of my 20s, I didn't feel invisible. I felt overlooked. And that hurts more. I wasn't unattractive. I wasn't boring. I had friends. I had opinions. I had a career that was steady enough. From the outside, my life looked fine. If someone glanced at my social media, they'd see weekend brunches, vacations, birthday dinners, smiling photos. If they met me briefly, they'd think, she seems confident. But something kept breaking quietly. Every time I wanted something real. Every time I leaned in emotionally. Every time I hoped someone might lean back. Conversations stayed polite. Dates ended early with gentle excuses. Text messages slowed. Then stopped. No dramatic endings. No angry arguments. Just distance. And that distance always felt personal. I watched other women move through the same rooms differently. They laughed and men leaned closer without even realizing they were doing it. They spoke casually about something small, an old childhood memory, a favorite book, and weeks later someone would bring it up again, remembering it like it mattered. Meanwhile, I replayed everything. Every sentence. Every pause that felt too long. Every smile that didn't quite land. At first, I blamed my appearance. Then my voice. Then my clothes. I changed outfits obsessively. I changed my hair. I practiced laughing softer. Then worried it sounded fake. I tried being more mysterious. Then more open. Then more playful. Nothing changed. Because what no one tells you, what no one ever explains clearly, is this. Attraction doesn't come from impressing someone. It comes from how they feel when they're around you. But I didn't learn that from a book. I learned it from a man who barely spoke. His name was Daniel Brooks. I met him at a friend's birthday dinner. One of those long tables where too many conversations overlap. Music slightly too loud. People trying to out-talk each other. He wasn't loud. He didn't dominate the table. He didn't tell grand stories. Honestly, if you weren't paying attention, you might not have noticed him at all. And yet, people gravitated toward him. Men respected him almost instantly. Women leaned in when he spoke. Even strangers seemed comfortable with him within minutes. I watched it happen in real time, and it unsettled me. He barely talked about himself. He didn't perform. He didn't try to be interesting. Instead, he asked questions. Not polite, surface-level questions like, "What do you do?" He asked questions that made people pause. What made you choose that path? What part of that was hardest for you? When did you realize that mattered to you? And when someone answered, he listened. Not waiting for his turn. Not planning his next response. Not scanning the room for someone more important. When he looked at you, the room softened. Time slowed. And for that moment, you felt like you mattered. A week later, I ran into him at a cafe. I don't know what came over me, but I asked him directly, "What's your secret?" He smiled, not arrogantly, not mysteriously, just warmly. And then he said something that permanently rewired how I understood human connection. Most people are so busy trying to be interesting that they forget to be interested. That sentence stayed with me. He explained something no one had ever articulated clearly before. Connection doesn't come from performance. It comes from presence. People don't remember your exact words. They remember how safe they felt around you. How seen. How understood. When someone feels emotionally recognized, their body reacts before their mind does. Their shoulders drop. Their breathing slows. Their smile becomes real. It isn't manipulation. It's biology. That realization didn't transform me overnight. There was no dramatic montage of self-improvement. But something shifted quietly. Instead of entering conversations thinking, "How do I impress this person?" I started asking, "How do I understand this person?" Instead of worrying about how I sounded, I focused on how they felt. And something unexpected happened. Silence stopped feeling threatening. Eye contact stopped feeling like a test. Conversations stopped feeling like auditions. And for the first time, people lingered. Not because I dazzled them. Not because I was perfect. But because they felt different around me. One night, months later, I found myself on a date that felt strangely calm. There was no performance happening on either side. We weren't trying to outshine each other. We weren't competing for attention. We were just there. And halfway through the evening, I realized something quietly powerful. I wasn't shrinking anymore. I wasn't adjusting myself to fit someone else's comfort. I wasn't calculating how I was being perceived. I was simply present. That's when I understood something deeper. Confidence isn't the absence of insecurity. It's the absence of obsession with yourself. Real confidence is self-forgetfulness. It's being so grounded that you don't need to constantly monitor your own performance. It's listening without rehearsing, speaking without over-editing, existing without apologizing for taking up space. And here's the part no one tells you. The more you focus on how someone else feels, the less room there is for your own insecurity to spiral. Because insecurity feeds on self-monitoring. Did I sound stupid? Was that joke too much? Did I talk too long? But presence interrupts that loop. Presence says, "Stay here. Stay with them. Stay in this moment." Over time, I stopped trying to be magnetic. And ironically, that's when I became more so. Not because I was performing better, but because I wasn't performing at all. And the most beautiful part? It wasn't just romantic relationships that changed. Friendships deepened. Work conversations became more meaningful. Strangers opened up to me in grocery store lines. Because the truth is this. Everyone is carrying something. A quiet insecurity. An old wound. A fear of not being enough. When you create space where someone feels safe to unfold, even slightly, you become memorable. Not because you impressed them, but because you allowed them to be fully themselves. Years later, I think back to the version of me sitting on her bed, refreshing cold message threads. I want to tell that younger version something simple. You were never lacking. You were just distracted. Distracted by the idea that love is earned through performance. Distracted by the belief that you had to be slightly different to be chosen. But connection doesn't reward perfection. It responds to presence. So if you've ever felt overlooked, if you've ever walked away from a conversation wondering what you did wrong, if you've ever believed you needed to change something fundamental about yourself to be wanted, pause and ask yourself one question instead. When you're with someone, are you trying to be impressive? Or are you trying to understand? That shift, small, quiet, almost invisible, changes everything. Because the loudest person in the room rarely holds the deepest connection. The person who listens does. And once you understand that, you stop chasing attention. You start building resonance. That's the difference between being noticed and being remembered. If this story resonated with you, subscribe. Stay for the next one. Because some lessons don't arrive loudly, they arrive quietly, and they change you before you even realize they have.